Due to the controversial, conspiratorial, speculatory, and spiritual nature of this material, the side project's legal team doesn't exist. Has requested that we begin this video with the following blanket disclaimer. Allegedly, but also supposedly, purportedly, ostensibly, reputedly. Because, let's face it, none of what we're about to discuss can be proven, and the Vatican can afford way better lawyers than me. Now I am afraid. That said, from the world's largest porn collection and the bones of St. Peter to aliens and the devil himself, according to multiple internet sources, which we can all agree are almost always accurate, all kinds of things are hidden away inside the Vatican. So let's take a look at a few of the most interesting. Imagine possessing a device so advanced that it would allow you to look back into the past. Here we're talking about actually being able to view epic historical events like the birth of Christ, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the public unveiling of the Cadillac Cimarron at the Detroit Auto Show of 1982. Alright then, in a word, it would be incredible. Well, according to the now deceased Roman Catholic priest Francois Brune, such a contraption may actually exist, and big shocker, it could be hidden inside the walls of the Vatican in Rome. The Chronovisor is a time viewer that, according to legend, was built by an Italian priest and tinkerer named Pellegrino Anetti, working alongside nearly a dozen world-class scientists. The Chronovisor and Anetti himself are the subjects of heated debate, but it's generally accepted that the latter did exist, though the verdict is still out on whether the former does. The story goes back more than half a century, when Francois Brune, Anetti, Enrico Fermi, and leading Nazi rocket scientist Werner von Braun supposedly met clandestinely to work on a groundbreaking project with unimaginable scientific and religious ramifications. Then, after years of development, the Chronovisor was born. So ridiculous. Anetti claimed that the device was housed in a large cabinet and used cathode ray tubes, antennas, levers, and buttons which could be manipulated to select the time and location that the user wanted to view. And in addition, the Chronovisor was capable of tracking the lives of specific individuals from beginning to end. At one point, a blueprint of the device even surfaced, though it didn't look like anything a 6th grader couldn't have drawn. Technical jargon aside, the machine apparently worked by receiving, processing, and de-scrambling residual electromagnetic energy left behind from historical events. Sounds real. Luckily, this energy also contained sound wave fragments which allowed users to not only see into the past, but to hear it as well. Anetti claims to have personally witnessed numerous events from long ago, the most poignant of which was the crucifixion of Christ, which he apparently photographed so that he wouldn't forget it later in life. Yeah, because that's something you'd forget. You literally saw Jesus being crucified. Better take a photo, I don't want to forget this one. In 1972, the image was published in an Italian magazine, but though it looked remarkably authentic, it was later proven to be a mirror image of an intricate wood carving made by sculptor Lorenzo Collo-Valera, which casts significant doubt on not only Anetti's character, but also the story as a whole. Because apparently there wasn't significant doubt existing already. This is ridiculous. In fact, it was just one of many key points of Anetti's tale that had been debunked, and in addition, an anonymous family member later claimed that while on his deathbed, he admitted to his part in the hoax. According to his source, Anetti deeply regretted his actions, though he'd only intended to draw non-believers to Christ and strengthen the faith of those who already believed. Despite unsubstantiated claims of deathbed confessions, however, up until the time of his death in 1994, Anetti was adamant that the device was real and that it had been stashed away inside the Vatican to prevent it from falling into the hands of those intent on using it for nefarious purposes and personal gain. Ironically, years before his death, the Vatican issued a decree stating that anyone who used such a device, if one existed, would be swiftly excommunicated. Good news, it doesn't exist, so you don't have to worry about that. Some diehard Catholics believe that the Chronovisor is real and that it has been hijacked by a tyrannical, Satan-worshipping world government. And those people are crazy. Either way, Brune, Anetti, von Braun, and Fermi are all dead and the Vatican isn't talking, so we'll probably never know who killed Jimmy Hoffa or where they buried his body. For those unfamiliar with the term, grimoires are books containing magic, spells, and invocations. So in layman's terms, the Grand Grimoire is the granddaddy of them all. Shrouded in myth and lore, the Grand Grimoire, also commonly referred to as Le Dragon Rouge or the Red Dragon, is a black magic tome that may date back to the early 15th century, though it could have been written in the early 1800s and passed off as a much older work. Whatever the case, its author was probably a shadowy figure named Antonio Venetiana del Rabina, of whom very little, as in next to nothing is known. Then again, other sources claim that it was written by the mythical figure Honorius of Thebes, who, to confuse things even further, may or may not have existed. Though Honorius's existence is debatable if he was a real person and an occult author, some say that he was possessed by the devil when he wrote it. Seems unlikely. If so, it would go a long way to explaining its grim content. Regardless of the author's identity, whoever wrote the book probably based much of it on the writings of King Solomon, which were surprisingly macabre and otherworldly in their own right. Divided into multiple sections, the grimoire includes a detailed organizational chart which lays out exactly who wields power in hell, starting with Emperor Lucifer and Prince Beelzebub in the top 2 spots respectively, and going all the way down to the lowliest demons and warlocks. Other positions that we're more familiar with in Western governments today include a Prime Minister, a Commander-in-Chief, and an Inspector General. But though interesting, it's the more practical content that makes it so popular, with those intent on crossing over to the dark side either temporarily or permanently. Specifically, it includes instructions and spells for summoning Satan, speaking with the dead, winning the lottery, making an amorous interest fall in love with you, and making yourself invisible. All of which sound like entirely real things. There's even a handy recipe for homemade glue, which is perfect for cost-conscious families with creative little ones stuck inside on a rainy day. That actually does sound real. Much earlier, grimoire copies have purportedly passed through the hands of a few of history's most notorious occultists like Aleister Crowley, but these days reprints can be purchased at bookstores and are available online from places like Amazon. Though there's no evidence that the original grimoire is secreted away in a Vatican vault, in recent years it has enjoyed a resurgence in popular literature, video games, movies, and television shows like Fox's Sleepy Hollow. So the question is, does the Catholic Church actually have a centuries-old copy of the Grand Grimoire, or perhaps even the original tucked away somewhere? Who knows? But though it's little more than an urban legend and pop culture curiosity in most countries, it's still frequently used in Haiti and other former French colonies in the New World, where voodoo and black magic are practiced. On another note, the Grand Grimoire is said to be impervious to fire, which, scientifically speaking, is partially true of all books, since the lack of air between the pages often allows them to survive infernos when everything around them is burned to a crisp. But this is something we could easily disprove by buying a copy of it off Amazon and setting fire to it. It would definitely burn. Also commonly referred to as the Miracle of the Sun, the Miracle of Fatima was a series of religious apparitions that were supposedly viewed by 3 children near Fatima, Portugal, between May and October of 1917. In each vision, the children, aged 7 to 10 years old, claimed that they saw the Virgin Mary in the sky and that she revealed 3 secrets about momentous events that would take place in the future. Though by now all 3 have technically been disclosed, some devout Catholics, conspiracy theorists, and all-around naysayers are convinced that the Vatican may not be telling the truth about the 3rd and final secret. The first 2 were officially revealed in the 1940s through the writings of the last surviving child, since the others died within a few years of the event. But for some reason, the 3rd secret was sealed in an envelope and sent to the Vatican, where it sat for more than half a century. The first secret the children saw was the bowels of hell, in which hordes of poor souls burned in seas of fire while unspeakably hideous demons tormented them mercilessly. In the second, they were told that the First World War would soon end, which it did in November of 1918. Who could have possibly predicted that? The disclosure of the first 2 secrets caused rumors to swirl about the 3rd, and everyone wondered why the Catholic Church was keeping it under such tight wraps. Some speculated that it foretold the fall of communism, while others thought it might pinpoint the end of the world due to a cataclysmic event like global thermonuclear war. In fact, the clamor for the 3rd secret became so frenzied that it resulted in a number of long-term hunger strikes and the hijacking of at least 1 aircraft, neither of which prompted the Vatican to spill the proverbial beans. Then, in 2000, with nary a word of warning, the Church disclosed that the 3rd secret of Fatima had been the foretelling of the assassination attempt made on Pope John Paul II in 1981. Guys, you gotta release the secrets before they happen, otherwise we can't believe you. As John Paul drove through a crowd in St. Peter's Square on May the 13th of that year, the anniversary of one of the 1917 apparitions, he was shot 4 times by Turkish assassin Mehmet Ali Agca. The Pope suffered severe blood loss but survived, and Agca was immediately apprehended. At trial, the gunman claimed that the botched assassination was connected to the 3rd secret of Fatima. Though he was sentenced by an Italian court to life in prison, Agca was later befriended by the very Pope that he'd tried to kill. Up until the time of his death, John Paul II maintained that his life had been spared by the visions in Fatima, but it was later revealed that he'd known about the third secret since 1978, 2 years before the attempt on his life. If so, one wonders why security wasn't beefed up or the event wasn't cancelled altogether. Could it be? Could it possibly be? Because it's not real. Despite the most recent revelation, however, some claim that it wasn't the real secret and that the truth may still be hidden somewhere inside the Vatican. As to why the secret wasn't revealed until 2000, in 1996 a Vatican spokesperson stated that there was nothing particularly worrisome in the message, and that releasing it before the event it predicted would have caused undue consternation among the masses and led to confusing religious prophecy. Though it's a fascinating story, ardent traditionalists suspect that the real third secret had nothing to do with the attempted assassination of the Pope, but that it may have foretold a coming rift inside the Church, namely the heretical reforms instituted by the Second Vatican Council that are seen by many as an unforgivable departure from tradition. Translated, written, and revised numerous times by Hungarian linguist, philosopher, and health enthusiast Edmund Bodo-Székely between the 1930s and 70s, the Essene Gospel of Peace is an obscure but enigmatic work that may have been based on ancient manuscripts hidden inside the Vatican. According to Székely, the contents of his book came largely from historical Hebrew and Aramaic texts, which he purportedly discovered in the Vatican archives and the Benedictine monastery in Monte Cassino, Italy, in the 1920s. Claiming that the artifacts to which he's referring don't officially exist according to the Vatican, many scholars and historians consider his work an outright hoax. And perhaps even more damning, the Vatican claims that there's no record of Székely ever visiting the archives, and it goes without saying that the Vatican would never ever lie about something like that. That said, short of breaking into the Vatican, which is protected by pike-wielding Swiss beefeaters, there's no way to verify either Székely's or the Church's claims, and since Monte Cassino and the historical items contained therein were destroyed during World War II, that line of inquiry is a dead end as well. How convenient. What's odd about Székely's case is that unlike other possibly earth-shattering items secreted away in the Vatican's vaults that deal with weighty issues like assassinations and end-of-days scenarios, the Essene Gospel of Peace is message is centered around the relatively mundane topics of health and diet. More to the point, Székely claims that the Essenes, a Jewish sect active before and during Jesus' lifetime, were vegetarians, and that Jesus was too. Whether true or not, it might not seem like a particularly controversial assertion, except that it is. In fact, both Székely and his work were, and still are, mercilessly ridiculed and criticized by detractors of nearly all stripes. But the questions remain, why did expounding the virtues of a healthy lifestyle create such a furor? And does the Vatican have motive to obscure the fact that Jesus was a vegetarian if he really was one? Székely supported his case by pointing out that some of what he discovered was similar to passages in the Old and New Testaments, and later to those found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered in 1947, more than a decade after his work was first published. The scrolls provided a first-hand look into ancient Jewish practices and beliefs, which had only been vaguely alluded to in the Bible. Székely's critics found it suspicious that he updated and republished his work yet again shortly after the scrolls were discovered, which they saw as proof that he was trying to use their popularity to sell more books. But since he had already revised his book numerous times before, it wasn't exactly a smoking gun, and Székely readily admitted that the scrolls supported his work and that continually updating content was vital to spreading his word, which, after all, was only aimed at keeping people open-minded and happy and healthy. Undeterred, Székely continued refining his work and began spending more and more time traveling abroad, expounding the benefits of healthy living and trying to convince his critics that he wasn't just peddling some new age bunk to get rich. Székely lived in England shortly before moving to America and marrying a prominent New York vegetarian. In 1940, the couple opened a health retreat in Baja California, Mexico, which they named Rancho La Puerta, where they set out exploring new fields and testing their ideas. Decades before they became fads, the Székelys grew organic produce, swore off packaged and processed foods chock full of refined sugar, cholesterol, additives, and preservatives, and invited guests from all over the world interested in pursuing both physical and emotional health, which they believed were inextricably linked. Huckster or not, in the face of a global health and obesity crisis caused largely by unhealthy food and inactivity, Székelys teachings are as relevant today as they were in the mid-20th century. Rancho La Puerta continues to operate as a health spa and eco-resort, and it's still owned by the Székely family. Spread over 3,000 acres of beautiful desert landscape just over the Mexican border southeast of San Diego, its amenities include numerous gardens, nearly 90 well-appointed rooms, a cathedral, and an impressive art collection. And no, it is not cheap. So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.